My aunt accidentally sent a video to a chat group of a family discussing how stupid and poor I am. I decided to get back at that itch when she comes back for more money. I made her homeless forever. My name is Ava, and for as long as I can remember, I believe that my family was my steadfast anchor, a constant source of support and love. I live in a small, cramped apartment right in the heart of the city, where every creaking floorboard and dim light reminds me of both the struggle and the comfort of ordinary life. Every morning I wake up to the familiar sounds of the bustling streets below, a mix of honking cars, distant chatter, and the rhythmic clatter of footsteps. In this modest space, I find solace in the little things: a steaming cup of coffee, the soft hum of a favorite tune on the radio, and the quiet determination that carries me through each day. I work at a tiny neighborhood cafe, a place where the scent of freshly ground coffee beans mingles with the warmth of human connection. It's not a glamorous job, but it's mine. Behind the counter, I've poured my heart into every shift, greeting regulars with genuine smiles, remembering their orders, and even offering a kind word to the occasional stranger who seems to need it. The job, much like my life, isn't about riches or accolades. It's about the simple, everyday acts of care that I believe defined me. Every paycheck was a testament to the sacrifices I made, every tip a silent nod to my efforts. I used to take pride in being the one who always stepped up, the one who shouldered responsibilities without complaint. Whether it was paying the rent on time, managing unexpected bills, or lending a hand whenever needed, I felt indispensable, a necessary piece in the intricate puzzle of my family's life. I assumed that my willingness to help was seen as a mark of loyalty and love, a virtue that made our bond unbreakable. Yet beneath the surface of these daily routines, there was a quiet longing, a hope that one day my efforts would be met with equal parts gratitude and respect. In those early days, I never questioned the balance between giving and receiving. I was certain that my sacrifices were a reflection of my love, a love that I assumed was returned in kind. Little did I know that this belief was about to be challenged in ways I could never have imagined. After a long shift at the cafe, I stepped onto the metro, ready to melt into the anonymity of the evening crowd. The rhythmic clatter of the train wheels was comforting, a steady backdrop to my tired thoughts. I was lost in the usual mental drift, counting down the minutes until I could sink into my small apartment, when my phone vibrated unexpectedly. Expecting the cheerful ping of a message from Stephanie, I hesitated before unlocking the screen. Instead of her familiar text, I found a single audio message waiting. Curiosity battled with apprehension as I pressed play. The sound that erupted wasn't warm or familiar. It was a series of voices, their tone as cold and precise as a steel blade. "Ava, you're nothing more than a cash machine," one voice declared, emotionless and detached. "Without us, you're nobody," another added with equal severity. In that cramped, dimly lit carriage, every word felt like a personal verdict, shattering the comforting illusions I'd nurtured for so long. As the train sped through dark tunnels and above ground under a starless sky, each passing moment dragged me deeper into a stark reality. I recalled all the evenings spent double-checking bank statements, the quiet sacrifices I made without complaint, and the constant, unspoken expectation that my support was unconditional. Now, those very acts were being reduced to mere transactions. The chill in those voices reverberated within me, exposing the raw truth. I had been nothing more than a convenient source of financial support, a tool used to prop up others' lives. The words echoed relentlessly in my mind, mingling with the ambient noise of the train and the soft murmur of strangers. I felt simultaneously betrayed and strangely awakened, as if that harsh message had peeled away layers of denial I had clung to for years. In that moment, as I sat surrounded by the anonymity of commuters, I realized that this painful revelation was not the end, but the spark that might finally ignite my journey toward reclaiming my own identity. Later that night, after the echoes of the harsh audio had faded, I found myself wandering into a small park near my apartment. The quiet darkness was a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. I sat on a weathered bench under the flickering glow of a street lamp, and as I stared into the distance, memories began to flood back, each one a testament to years of silent sacrifices. I recalled the countless times I'd set aside my own needs to keep the family afloat, the late night calls from hospitals when someone fell ill, the endless stream of bills that I paid without a second thought, and the endless transfers that drained my savings. Each act, I had believed, was a token of unconditional love. But now, as I sifted through these recollections, a painful clarity settled in. I realized that my financial support had never been a mutual exchange. It was a lifeline they clung to, an expectation rather than a gift freely given. Images of my cramped apartment, where I juggled unpaid rent and overdue utilities, merged with moments of hesitation before each new request. I remembered the silent dread that accompanied each notification on my phone, a subtle reminder that my stability was a resource to be exploited. Every memory stung like a bruise, each one a silent admission that I had been used, not cherished. In that solitary moment under the cold night sky, the truth became undeniable. I wasn't a pillar of unwavering love. I was a sacrificial offering. The realization was as bitter as it was liberating. My self-worth had been measured in currency, and the scales had finally tipped, showing me that it was time to reclaim what was truly mine, the right to live for myself, free from the relentless demands of those who saw me only as a source of funds. That morning, the sound of my alarm was as routine as ever, yet something inside me had shifted. As I stirred awake, the familiar gray light of dawn filtered through the thin curtains of my small room. My phone buzzed almost immediately. A text from my mother, Catherine, asking once again for a transfer to cover the urgent utility bill. In the past, that message had been a summons I'd never hesitated to obey, a call to duty masked as familial love. But today, the routine no longer felt comforting. Instead, it stung with the weight of countless sacrifices. I stared at the screen, heart pounding in a mix of fear and a strange, budding resolve. Every time I had sent money, every silent moment spent reeling from a sudden bill, had slowly woven a chain of dependency and self-denial. This time, as my eyes locked onto the message, I knew that my years of unquestioning generosity had to end. Without any dramatic flourish or elaborate justification, I typed a brief, cold reply. Sorry, but I have unexpected expenses this month. I can't help. The message was simple, yet in its brevity lay an act of rebellion. When I hit send, it felt as if a long-held dam had burst, releasing years of pent-up frustration and sorrow. I felt a subtle crack inside me, a quiet breaking away from the role I'd been forced to play for so long. In that single, decisive act, I reclaimed a fragment of my own worth, asserting that my life wasn't meant to be a perpetual transaction. The silence that followed on my phone was both deafening and strangely liberating. It was the sound of a new beginning echoing in an empty room, a promise that from now on, my choices, my money, and my time would belong to me alone. The calm of the early morning shattered with the buzz of my phone. A flood of messages came in, a barrage from Catherine, David, Stephanie, and even Aunt Rachel, each message more frantic than the last. Their words, dripping with indignation and disbelief, pleaded for an explanation. As I scrolled through these texts, my chest tightened with a mixture of sorrow and resolve. I knew this was the inevitable backlash that would follow the decision to finally put an end to my endless sacrifices. Before I could gather my thoughts or retreat to the solitude of my room, a firm knock at my door jolted me out of my reverie. I opened it to find Brandon standing there, his eyes red-rimmed and filled with both anger and desperation. He didn't wait for pleasantries. In a strained, quavering tone, he blurted out, "Ava, how can you do this? Without you, we're spiraling into chaos." Do you even realize what's at stake? I steadied my breathing and met his gaze with a calm I hadn't felt in years. Brandon, it's not about turning my back on you or the family, I said, my voice firm yet laced with hurt. It's about ending a cycle where I was never seen as a person, only as a source of money. His face contorted, as if struggling between anger and disbelief. So this is it? You're choosing yourself over us? He demanded, his voice rising despite his obvious inner turmoil. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of every dollar transferred, every sacrifice made, and every silent tear shed in the hope of familial love. I'm done being taken for granted. Every late-night hospital bill, every emergency payment, it's all been built on the assumption that I'd always be there, always giving. But I've reached my limit, Brandon. I need to start living for myself, not just for what I can provide. For a heartbeat, the room fell silent as Brandon's eyes searched mine, pleading for some sign of the old, unbreakable bond. His next words tumbled out in a mixture of anger and despair. Family means sticking together, Ava. I can't believe you'd let us down when we needed you most. His voice wavered, betraying the fear behind his accusations. I looked at him, feeling both the sting of betrayal and the liberation of finally speaking my truth. I'm not letting you down. I'm simply no longer sacrificing my identity for a relationship that only values my money. I want us to have respect, true support, not dependency. In that charged moment, with emotions raw and unfiltered, the space between us filled with a painful honesty. The confrontation wasn't just about money or expectations. It was the shattering of old patterns and the painful birth of a new reality where I reclaimed my worth, no matter the cost. In the dim light of my tiny home office, I sat at a battered desk that had witnessed years of silent endurance. The space was cluttered with the remnants of my sacrifices, crumpled receipts, faded bank statements, and scribbled notes chronicling every transfer and payment. Tonight, however, these pieces of evidence would no longer serve as reminders of my burdens, but as tools to reclaim my identity. I spread out each document before me, every slip of paper representing an act of love, twisted into obligation. The weight of every payment, from emergency medical bills to late-night rent transfers, pressed down on me. With a steadying breath, I began organizing these fragments into a coherent ledger. My fingers trembled as I typed up the details, each keystroke a testament to years of unrecognized self-denial. There was no poetry in it, just raw, undeniable facts that told the story of a family that had taken more than they ever gave. Then came the letter. With cold determination, I began to write, each word a declaration of independence. I recounted every incident, every sum, and every sacrifice with meticulous detail. The room was silent except for the scratch of my pen against paper, echoing my resolve. When I reached the final sentence, I paused, heart pounding with the fierce realization of what I was about to do. In bold, uncompromising letters, I wrote, "This is my final account. I will no longer be your financial savior." The simple statement resonated like a thunderclap in the quiet room. It was more than a refusal. It was a severing of the invisible chains that had bound me for years. With no hesitation left, I sealed the letter and sent it off, distributing the evidence of my sacrifices to Catherine, David, Rachel, and Brandon. My trembling hands then reached for my phone, and with each contact blocked, I felt a surge of liberation. The act was final. The voices that had dictated my life were now silenced. In that decisive moment, surrounded by the tangible proof of my past, I embraced a new future. The cluttered desk, once a symbol of relentless obligation, transformed into a battleground where I reclaimed control. The power in my hands was undeniable. I was choosing me, and nothing could undo that choice. In the days that followed, a silence descended over my life, a silence so profound it was both soothing and jarring. The usual flurry of calls and desperate messages had vanished, replaced by an eerie quiet that forced me to confront my own thoughts. Every morning, stepping outside felt like stepping into a new world, where the air was charged with possibility and a hint of uncertainty. I had traded a life of constant demands for one where I had to listen to the gentle rhythm of my own heartbeat. At work, the cafe's chatter carried on as usual, but I found myself more a silent observer than an active participant. Regulars would glance my way with a mixture of confusion and pity, as if sensing the change that had overtaken me. Friends and acquaintances, once entangled in the web of shared financial woes, now kept their distance. I began to understand that the consequences of my decision rippled far beyond a single text or letter. They altered relationships, shifted power dynamics, and left a void where familiarity once resided. That void, however, slowly transformed into a space for rediscovery. With the heavy weight of obligations lifted, I began exploring parts of myself that had long been neglected. I revisited old hobbies, wandered through art galleries, and even started journaling my thoughts, a practice that revealed hidden hopes and rekindled forgotten dreams. In these moments of solitude, I encountered both the sting of isolation and the gentle emergence of inner strength. The scars left by years of self-sacrifice were real, yet each day I found them softening into reminders of the courage it took to finally stand up for myself. The silence wasn't empty. It was filled with the echo of a life reclaimed, a life where my choices mattered more than others' expectations. Though the absence of familiar voices sometimes brought moments of loneliness, it also paved the way for an authentic existence defined by my own terms, a future where I could finally live for me. Sitting alone in a quiet corner of the cafe where I once toiled as an employee, I now savor every moment of solitude and clarity. The familiar clink of cups and soft murmur of distant conversations create a soothing backdrop for my thoughts, thoughts that are finally my own. I watch the steady rhythm of life outside the window, where every face and fleeting moment reminds me that I'm no longer trapped in a cycle of endless sacrifice. The weight of my past has lessened, replaced by a burgeoning sense of self-worth that I had long forgotten. Every day now begins with a deliberate choice, a choice to honor my own needs and dreams. I rise with the sun, not out of obligation or fear of missing another bill's deadline, but with a genuine excitement for the opportunities ahead. I am learning to live on my own terms, discovering that freedom is not the absence of responsibility, but the presence of self-respect. In the quiet moments between busy tasks, I rediscover passions that once lay dormant, a sketchbook gathering dust in the corner, the unfinished novel scribbled on napkins, and the new friendships that are blossoming from shared, unburdened moments. I still feel the sting of old wounds, the echoes of harsh words, the betrayals of a family that once defined my world. Yet those memories now serve as lessons rather than chains. With every breath, I commit to a future where my kindness is a choice, not a tool for exploitation. The scars from my past are reminders of the battles I fought and won, and as I navigate the uncertain path ahead, they imbue me with strength and resilience. Today, I have reclaimed not just my money, but my dignity and my dreams. I'm not erasing the past, but integrating it into a narrative where I am the hero of my own story. The journey won't be without challenges, and loneliness sometimes shadows my steps. However, with each deliberate stride, I embrace the promise of a life where every decision is mine to make. I choose to be whole, to be brave, and most importantly, to live for myself. Now, Ava is not defined by what she gives, but by the vibrant, unstoppable spirit of a woman who finally understands her own worth.